Hey, Soul Survivors. I'm Cynthia Schiller here with Joshua Schwartz. And I'll tell you what, this is going to be an ongoing series because he is full of information, extremely interesting story. So, Joshua, please explain or let us know a little bit more about yourself.
Hi, my name is Joshua Schwartz. I am a former United States Marine, and I am going through an inpatient program right now at the Battle Creek VA. I've had lots of trauma in my life, and I'm just I'm trying to get out there and help other people who've been through similar situations, or even if I can give you a little bit of wisdom to get you through what you're going through. So,
And I'll tell you what, I didn't mean to cut you off, but Joshua, I've seen him on Facebook. We're going to drop a link below. His story is fascinating. He's dealing with his demons and overcoming a lot of problems, some mental illness, things like that. But today, what we're going to talk about is the toxic relationship that he had, the outcome it had on his life, his children's life, how the court systems work, what's fair, what's not fair, and all the outcomes and the devastation it brings. So, Joshua, can you tell us a little bit about your story and what brought you to even being in you're currently in a rehabilitation center right now, correct?
correct. Yes. So here I go. So back in 2017, so I got married the tail end of my Marine Corps enlistment. I met someone through some mutual friends in the Marine Corps who was 13 years younger than me. She was from Michigan. We ended up getting together. I ended up getting her pregnant. So we ended up getting married. After that, we had 4 kids, pretty much almost back to back.
And
Um,
let me point something out. I noticed the age difference, and
yeah.
you said you think that she has some mental illness. A lot of times there's that big age difference that it's trying to fill a void. So please continue. I just wanted to point that out.
So, truth be told, is in the very beginning it started as a relationship, and at the very end it ended as a parent-child relationship, and she molded it into that. So, what happened is in 2017, we had some friends over at night, and she had a pretty big alcohol problem. She had been molested as a child, so she struggled a lot with sexuality, and she was, really promiscuous, and she had a really rough past. And but her family's, upper middle class, and they're people of affluence in the town they lived in. So, we ended up having people over, and they were drinking, and everybody was drinking. And I got really upset, and I took our 4 children and I went into the bedroom to go to sleep. During that time, the people there were feeding my son from a previous marriage who was 17. He was in the living room playing his video games. They were giving him alcohol, and I didn't know it.
Oh,
And so what had happened is that night they ended up having sex. Now,
now
I
your
didn't know.
your wife and your
Son from a
son.
previous marriage. Correct.
Okay.
So it would have been his stepmother.
How old was
Um,
he? Can I ask how
he
old?
17. He
17. Okay.
was 17. So at that time, the next day, it was never brought to my attention. We That was a Saturday night, and so on Sunday we would always do family movie night. So we would go out and get. I wasn't keen on giving my kids pop or anything like that, so we would go out and get Little Caesars, and we would get a 2 liter and some candy, and we would put all of our pillows and blankets in the house in the living room, and we would watch a movie, and we would fall asleep there. So the crazy thing is my ex-wife and my son went to Little Caesars together and got this pizza and all these snacks and came back. The following day, my son and I, we had worked together, and I get a phone call from my ex-wife, and she's like, "I got to tell you something, but I don't want to tell you over the phone." And I'm like, Why call me and say that? Of course I got to
Right.
know. You can't say someone, don't tell me over the phone. You got to tell
We
me.
like to do that to you guys.
So so she ends up telling me, "Well, I went to the hospital because I think your son raped me." And
Oh,
so immediately I was taken back, like, this doesn't make any sense because, of course, yesterday they both rode together to go get pizza
do
and
you
nobody
believe
said anything.
do you believe it was
No.
consensual?
Well, there was an investigation. So yes, it was
Okay,
consensual. You
and
know what I mean?
on top of that, was she able to possibly become pregnant, like not on birth control and still of the right age to have pregnancy?
No,
Okay,
we had already had 4 kids, and she got her tubes tied. So
okay,
there was no she couldn't get pregnant. So she just had a, what is it, a swab, right? A
okay.
swab done, and then it was positive for
A
semen.
rape kit,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so she tried to play the rape card, and that's when, CPS, the hospital called CPS right away. And her story didn't really match up, and the hospital's like, well, why wouldn't you have come the very next day? Like, why wouldn't you have said anything? Why did you
A lot of
wait? And
times though,
then,
to be honest, like I'm a victim of rape. A lot of times we either fear repercussion, we either fear our abuser, or we fear that we're not going to be believed. Like you hear a lot of times at the courts where they're like, what were you wearing? What color were your panties? And this and that. So I'll be honest, I didn't report mine.
okay.
So as far
So
as that, those kind of things you have to take into account,
yep.
that there are many reasons. And you see like on TV, all these people coming forward later on.
Hmm.
Sometimes you repress the situation, or you feel so much shame. There's a lot of things that go into that. So that, as far as, I'm not saying that
Yeah.
situation
No,
didn't
I get
happen.
it. I get what you're saying. Like I thought about that actually after I said that, and I thought, yes, of course, women come forward later. However, there was an investigation done, and also she already, like, most of the town knew her past, and like she had slept around with a ridiculous amount of people, and she had been raped before by guys because she had such a bad reputation, I guess,
A lot of
that
times too, victims that were traumatized through rape, it's either they totally withdraw and they don't want to have sex anymore, or they overindulge. There's a
yeah.
lot of overcompensation with abuse, trauma, or a lot of times even in the like you, if you have a narcissistic parent, the other parent will overcompensate and it destroys the relationship. And a lot of times the one that's trying the hardest are seen as weak, and so they see the strength of the narcissist and they end up with a narcissistic parent. It's very interesting how that goes.
Hmm. That's it. That is an interesting dynamic. So, but so she ended up, yeah, like I said, there was an investigation, and nothing came out about it. And my son freaked out and ran away, and we didn't talk for about a year. I was pretty upset with him. Obviously, this is, a big thing. And then
Now
during that,
him running away was probably shame based, like he didn't want to
correct.
face you.
Oh, very much. And for a long time he blamed himself because this led to the loss of our kids, which I'll get to in a second. But he blamed himself hardcore for a long time, and it took a lot of me. Hey, I forgive you. We all make terrible mistakes, and yes, this happened, and I've done a lot of stupid things myself, son, but you are my son and I still love you, and we have to work through this and talk this out. So it took a little bit to get him there, and I still think sometimes he blames himself because he sees sometimes I struggle. That's why I'm back here in this rehab right now, because I do struggle with the situation that happened.
Right.
And
And
so,
it, like the trauma you went through, instead of taking it out on your kid, you took it out on yourself with the
right.
alcohol and things that you were doing. And you recently had an accident. What happened with that accident?
Are we talking about Italy?
Yes.
Okay. So I ended up
I've been
uh
following you.
So I ended up in Italy. Well, so that's kind of another, like, segment into another story about this girl who I've been chasing for a year. Well, we'd been talking for 3 years on the internet, and 2 years of it was COVID. And then I spent 2 years, learning how to travel. And then the last year was a year of travel. And so in that time, I had been to England, 6 times to meet this girl, and she didn't show up. So as a Marine, I always had a backup plan. What am I going to do? So I utilized it to travel the world and go see places. But because of what was happening and this girl and the rejection, and so I suffer from borderline personality disorder, hence why you just stated something that's very clear in borderline so if you don't know, borderline personality disorder is a cluster B type personality. So
Correct.
we share some of the same traits as psychopaths, narcissists, all of this stuff.
It's
However,
very similar.
the big difference between them is this: instead of hurting other people, we hurt ourselves. So we don't go out and we don't hurt everyone else around us. We self-destruct and destroy ourselves because we struggle with rejection and being, thinking that we're going to be lonely for the rest of our lives or things like that. And so because of that, the rejection component of it, I continued to self-destruct, more drinking every day, hardcore, more drugs every day. And so I was in Italy just recently, and it got to a point where it got so bad. Um, was drinking hardcore every day. I was smoking weed all day. And I had just left a bar. It was probably 2 or 3 in the morning, and I was really drunk. You know, I was with a bunch of Italians that took me out, and they were treating me amazing and buying me drinks, and they were so fantastic. But I left, and when I left, I was out searching for cocaine. And I don't normally do those types of things unless I'm really, really drunk. And so in that, I ended up finding it, but I ended up getting robbed. And
Oh,
so as a Marine, I don't tend to run away from things. So this is the problem with the fight or flight with where I'm at right now, why I'm back here and the PTSD. I have a tendency to not run away. I run to. And so when they did that, I gave chase. But
okay.
a guy came up on a bicycle and he had a razor blade in his shirt and I didn't know it. And so when I went to swing, he slipped the razor blade out and sliced my hand up. So if you can see right here, there's a nice scar right here. And then it's hard to see, but
Yeah, it's hard to
right
see with the
here.
background. But that's the thing though, when you start going down that spiral, you start
Hmm.
finding more. You're chasing dopamine. That's exactly what people are doing. Because not only was alcohol no longer enough, you also started adding on extra things, and you enjoyed the attention from people who might not have been the best person for you. But I wanted to talk in a different video with you. We're going to do this as a series. We're going to talk about the mortification, because there is something that broke to bring you to face your alcoholism. And to get back on topic though, as far as the devastation that happened in your relationship, that we're going to run out of time. So Joshua, I don't know if you want to continue and do one back to back with me. Would you like
Yeah,
to?
that's
All
yeah,
right.
that's fine.
So we can sum this up. We got about 5 more minutes, and then we'll do another one if you're cool with that.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
absolutely.
So maybe I do need to upgrade, but I'll tell you what, guys, Joshua's story is extremely something worth following, because he found God, or reconnected with God in the process of this. So if you're struggling with your spirituality, I want you to hear his story. So we got about 5 more minutes, Joshua, and then we'll meet one more time tonight.
Yep.
So with your what happened with CPS, and then we'll continue on.
So CPS got involved because of what my ex-wife had and my son had done. They did an investigation, and so here's how that played out. In the very beginning, they investigated my wife and they labeled her as a sexual abuser. And so my mother used to work for CPS, and so I have a weird background. My whole family was law, and my grandpa was a judge, my dad was a cop, my mom was a
Oh,
prison guard, and and then they went to my mom went to foster care, and she was a foster care for CPS for 20 years. So she knew I was getting railroaded. She could see what was going on. So she was actually a kind of a whistleblower for the state of Michigan for CPS, and she left the company. And so she wrote us a letter and I submitted it to an administrative law judge. And we had an administrative hearing because in the very beginning, they labeled my ex and they were like, they gave me a pat on, good job, Josh. You really did good. You took the kids out of the situation. You went somewhere else into another room. This is what you did. Then they came back and said, no, 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 no. We got to label you too because your son was out there, and so you improper supervision. And I'm like, yo, he's 17 years old. You know what I
also,
mean?
did he live with his mom, or he lived with you?
No. So my ex-wife called me because she put him on pills from the time he was 5 to 16 and he was really out of control and they played guinea pig with him. And so she called me and said, I can't take this anymore. I can't deal with him. So I took him at 16. He was living with me for a year.
Okay. Was he
And
ADHD, or was he something
yeah,
different?
well, he has ADHD, but they labeled him with bipolar or something. But then now
Okay.
they think BPD maybe because that's what they've labeled me
Yeah.
as. But
Sometimes I
but
wonder on the genetic component too.
but they also say he might be a bit on the autistic side, and
Okay.
so I don't know. But so anyways, I went in and I fought them. So she wrote this letter that got me the hearing for the administrative law judge. After that, I got what's called the 154 report from CPS, which is the whole report of what happened. I also am not an idiot. So if you guys don't know, I went through 2 degree programs, systems administration and security, and a bachelor's in business. And so I can do the same thing that these people that are sitting across from me at the table do the same. So I took the 154 report and I did all of the research. I got the CPS manual. I went through the with a fine tooth comb. I submitted my evidence. The state, so I had no lawyer. It was just me and my ex-wife, and then the supervisor for the state of Michigan. We went in front of the administrative law judge, and it's really hard to get off the central registry, and I beat them.
Oh, you
Oh, they were
did. That's really hard to represent yourself.
I beat them, and they
Good
were
for you.
pissed. They were so mad. Well, I mean, is it good? Because it ended up being, that's where they came back with a vengeance, and that's probably, one of the components why I don't have my kids, because they came and they were basically like, who are you? Like, who are you? You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Well,
they go ahead.
I was just going to say, on that note, we're going to sign off and join.
Yeah.
So we're going to pick it up on just how this affects so many people. And, sometimes you get labeled if you have any type of mental illness. So it, also, we got a lot to talk about, just how people perceive, and yeah. All my mind's spinning because we got so many things to talk about.
There's a
So
lot.
comment below, comment more, please, and we will keep these coming as long as you guys are commenting more. And Joshua, we're gonna log right back in. I'll see you in about 2 minutes.
Yep.
All right. Got a little tongue-tied at the end on my part, but we'll see you soon. I've been talking all day. I'll see you soon, Joshua. Same link.
Yep.